Welcome to ThoughtConnected.com and today's Associate Insight. My name is John Munro and I'm the owner and founder of ThoughtConnect. Today I'll be speaking to Anthony McAvaney. Anthony has been an amazing associate of mine for over 12 months now. Early 2017 he joined as an associate of the ThoughtConnect group, and he's been a fantastic support and influence on associates who have joined us. Anthony has an incredibly broad experience at senior executive levels and senior management levels. He now focuses his time as a mentor, digital marketer, specialist coaching, helping consultants, entrepreneurs develop and grow their online business. So really important work, and an area of work in the over 280 people that I've met in the consulting space that isn't done particularly well. So massive opportunities in this space to get better. So hi Anthony, thanks for joining us today.
Hi John, and thank you for taking time out to have a chat. Always look forward to it.
No worries, thank you. How about we start off by you telling me a little bit about your background?
Sure, mate. Well, as people can probably see, a few grey hairs and some no hair, so I'm of advanced years, but I've had a pretty diverse career. I've pretty much always been in helping professions. I started off as a banker many years ago, and I had the good fortune, actually, while being employed by the bank, to be transferred into their training and development department, and that pretty much became my career for the majority of my career. So I've been able to work in that capacity, mainly doing sort of developmental stuff, life skills work, sales coaching, sales training, leadership training, those sorts of things, the soft skills really. And I've done that pretty much for the majority of my career in industries like retail, wholesale, tourism, and some government enterprises. I've had periods of self-employment doing that sort of stuff for myself. So I did that pretty much full-time up until the late 90s, where I started to get a hankering to do some counselling. So I got some formal qualifications as a counsellor, and that led me into the whole area of sort of career coaching, and in particular outplacement coaching, which for people who don't know what that is where you're basically assisting people who've lost their jobs due to redundancy. So there's that whole job search coaching, but also, really helping people to recover from what for many is literally a life-changing experience. I mean, most people tend to identify themselves with the work that they do, and when that's pulled away, through no fault of their own. Often there's some trauma and lack of confidence and those sorts of things. So I did that for, a number of years, and I've kind of specialised that through pretty much the turn of the century. I spent a little bit of time also working in the higher education sector, working with undergraduates, postgraduates and PhDs also in that sort of career coaching space. And you mentioned that I'm now also sort of in this online digital marketing space. I kind of started in that around 2007. I always had a feeling that that the internet was the place to be, and I actually learned how to use HTML, built myself a website mainly around career stuff, and that still exists. It's a pretty old-looking site now, but that was my first dabble into that space. And about 2.5, nearly 3 years ago, I came across another organisation that mentored people in how to actually set up online businesses. Literally, their promise was, we can teach you how to promote anything to anybody, anywhere in the world, at any time you like. So I've really, it's a bit like doing a master's degree in online marketing. The information that I've been able to obtain from this organisation and from the mentorship that I've received there really has transformed my thinking about the way that business is done. And so I'm now in a position where I can coach and teach others to do that. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background. It's pretty diverse, but there's always been a strong helping theme. I love working with and helping people, and particularly with something practical like this, helping people to develop other sources of income, particularly in the online space.
Yeah, and as someone who has got a very broad background, again, sometimes the biggest challenge we have is not so much that we know, but being quite specific about the area that we want to focus on. So with your background, what is your area of speciality that you would say is the number one thing that you could help people with?
I think now my area of speciality, and this is really, I guess, thanks to working with you, I sort of left full-time employment about nearly 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now as well. And I thought that my speciality would have been still in that career transition, career coaching area. But it occurred to me that really the need and the thing that I really enjoyed doing, like one of my key strengths, I think, is strategy. And it just makes sense. Everything inside me screams out that the online world is where people go for information, advice, education, and so on. And if we as in that space, we are missing out on a huge chunk of business. So that's really, I guess, my specialty, is to work with people to help them to recognise what that opportunity is. And my training background then starts to come into that, like most of us, you know, who've been in the workforce for a while, and particularly if you're going into the consulting, coaching, mentoring field, we've got an awful lot of IP to offer. And I think part of the coaching that I can deliver is, well, how do you get some IP out of your head and to put it in a slightly different form, a digital form, so that you can leverage what the internet and the online world offers today. So that's maybe a little bit long-winded, but I think it's helping people transition from more traditional methods of doing business to add another element to it by you know, being able to operate in that online space. And you don't have to be a tech guru to do that. It's just simply using readily available tools to do different business in a slightly different way.
Yeah, and I think you are not probably pushing the main value that you provide is that you are an end-to-end expert on it. We've talked a number of times about people's capability maybe on video or presenting or doing the appointments. But the gap may well be in the business development side. How do I run the technology? How do I then get IP up and running? So I can understand that many people will look back and say, look, yeah, sales funnel, let's move online, let's move digital, let's move video. But it is the full range of steps that is required. And you do need somebody who knows all of those things.
Yeah, and I think that's where I've been so fortunate with the education I've received these past few years from the six-figure mentors, is that it is complete end-to-end. And, I think when working with clients, that's something that I'm at particular pains to do, is to find out, well, what do you know? What do you know how to do? And I try and fill in the gaps. And, I work with some people who are quite technically proficient, but are not familiar with sales funnels creations. There are others that I've worked with that know none of it, but kind of get the concept. So it's, I kind of hadn't thought about it that way, offering something from an end-to-end perspective. But yeah, that's quite true.
Yeah. So just taking a little bit back, what compelled you to become a consultant or really a micro business owner or a small business owner?
Okay. Look, there's been an entrepreneur burning in me pretty much since the late 80s, I suppose. I worked probably, how many years did I work for myself as a consultant? It probably would have been 8 or 9 years. Not very successfully, I might add, because I wasn't a particularly good networker. I managed to get quite a bit of referral business, but actually getting out there and hunting for the business was not my favourite thing. But what pushes me into that is that I do love the freedom and the flexibility that running your own business offers, with all its ups and downs and its pitfalls. I don't know whether this is something about anti-authority or whatever, but I never particularly like having to answer to a boss. And I think the word consultant pretty much goes with my sense of who I am, in that I've spent a lifetime basically helping. I'm the eldest of a pretty large family. I've always kind of been a teacher, coach, mentor, and so on. And consulting is the way to do that. I like to help people solve problems. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but they were the driving forces for me, really.
It lines up with the important concept of, if you're going to run your own business, you should be doing something that you're extremely passionate about. To help you through the inevitable downtimes and the times that you're in the swamp. So, you know, it was a really important lesson for all of us. And if we're not doing something we're passionate about, there's a whole host of issues which come from that.
Sure.
How about an example now, Anthony, of you know, the things that you're most passionate about? How a client one-on-one would go? You know, the sorts of things you talk about and the processes you talk about in a meeting.
Okay, well, the conversation would be pretty wide-ranging. I would need to get to know what the consultant or coach or mentor is in the business of doing. I would like to understand what their current business model looks like, how they go about generating business, where they believe their areas of strength in that are, and then to begin to open up the conversation, have they ever considered the online space and some of the advantages that that offers? And that's really, I think, also, you know, coming from a training, you need what the learner already knows before you come in with solutions. So that's pretty much what happens in the first conversation is, all right, what are you doing now and what would you like to be able to do and how do you think you'd like me to help you with that? And that sort of then begins to forge an agreement about, you know, what sort of work that we would actually do together. And my approach typically is, rather than do stuff for people, it's to teach them how to. So it's that old story of, you know, teach someone to fish and they eat for life, rather than providing them with fish to eat. So it's very much looking over the shoulder. But look, if people want me to do the work, I realise that in the consulting micro business space, people are very time poor. And to take time out of your business to develop some of this stuff, particularly if you don't know what you're doing, can be pretty time consuming. But yeah, that's sort of the initial approach, is very much around needs identification and agreeing on things like timelines and outputs and those types of things.
Yeah. So what, as a micro business owner or a small business owner, what's your unique skill set that's helped you to be successful?
Well, I think coming back to helping, that we are in a people business, and I think first of all it begins with the ability actually to create effective working relationships with people. So I consider myself to be an outstanding listener. It's always been one of my skills. People compliment me on the listening skills. I'd rather listen than yap. But that's where the magic is, basically. And I think once you give the people the opportunity to talk and to express themselves, that's where you start to get to know the person. You get to really understand what their needs are. And I think secondary to that I've always I just seem to have a head for strategy. I tend to get into some sort of flow. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but, you know, pathways just seem to appear for me, which I'm able to, you know, sit down and discuss with the client. So I think strategy is a particular strength of mine, and I think the way that my training background has helped too is to build some structure around strategy. So it's just not blue sky stuff. It's, well, how do we actually begin to make this real? And I think I have a love of learning too, that I'm not the sort of person who believes they know all, but I'm always going on. I like to self-help. I'm into sort of self-education and those sorts of things. So I don't consider myself to be stuck. I'm always interested in advancement.
So just a couple of questions, taking that a little bit further. As a small business owner, what are the biggest hurdles for you as a small business owner?
Look, I think this might be very personally about me, but I think the more that I interact with self-employed people, small business owners, is the need for a mentor. Really, I was given this advice in my very early 30s on several occasions. If you want to be successful in life, it's critical that you actually have a mentor or mentors. And it's something until like fairly late in life, in fact, probably until I met you, John. In fact, I've not had a mentor. And at my cost, at my significant cost, because I don't know whether it's eldest child syndrome or whatever. You know, I've always considered myself to be self-reliant. To try and muddle through and solve problems without another voice, without a sounding board, I think that is a massive hurdle for anybody who is self-employed. And even people that are in maybe small family businesses and that, sometimes those who are closest to us, like husbands, wives, kids, and so on, are often too close. And so to have somebody that you can actually sit down with and have an objective, I was going to say hard-nosed. It's not about being hard-nosed, but it's about the person sitting opposite you, your mentor, telling you plain truths from their point of view, or things that you need to hear, and just sort of that arm around the shoulder kind of stuff. I think they are, like, attitude and confidence and those sorts of things are such big factors in business success. And, you know, if you're wallowing in the muck, if cash flow's dried up, you're not sure where your next client's coming from, it's very, very easy to get down in the dumps and to even consider quitting. And, you know, sometimes just a conversation with a mentor, you know, where you start to pick apart the problems, where you start to problem solve, start to get creative. You know, my sessions with you always give me energy and a renewed passion and enthusiasm for what I do. So I think that's a big hurdle. If you don't have that sort of support network around you, unbiased, objective, but somebody also who's got the runs on the board themselves, I think that's one of the important things in a mentor, that you know, the people that you're taking advice from need to have done what you aspire to do to be successful and so on. Yeah. So yeah, you know, that's perhaps a really long-winded answer, but I think that's a massive hurdle to be overcome.
No, I agree. You know, I was going to ask you what the best tip for someone struggling to take their idea forward would be, but, you know, your view is the same as mine, in that you need support. You need someone who is going to buy into what you're doing and help you through that process. So, no, great. Thank you. Fantastic.
And if I can add to that too, John, that for somebody coming into business new, there's an awful lot that you need to know about beyond what your area of technical expertise is. It's just the rigor that you bring to the business, and I think this is where a mentor helps to fill in those gaps. I mean, I've learned so much from you in terms of like setting up service agreements, things like compliance, protecting yourself from you know, mishaps, legal suits, those sorts of things. You know, and looking back at my several attempts at being self-employed, there were so many gaps in my planning, which, you know, had I done, you know, may have had quite different outcomes. So again, that's the perspective that a well-balanced mentor will bring to the conversation. You know, they help you to learn about the things that you need to know about that you don't. Yeah. I just think that's really an important add-on in terms of mentorship.
Yep. Prospective clients will look at the ThoughtConnect.com.au website and look at the associate bios and these videos. But if you were talking to a prospective client, what should they really look for when they make their decision over who they have as a consultant?
Okay, I think as a consultant, they need to be confident that the person they're picking has the technical expertise, obviously, that they're looking for, that they're able to demonstrate that they have runs on the board. So in other words, it's just not textbook knowledge, that they've actually got the ability to apply their knowledge, and that they've actually done so successfully. And again, I think to have confidence, so in other words, the people skills become important, that you want a consultant who does listen, who knows what questions to ask, who knows when to step in, who knows when to step out. Just to read the pace of where your client is actually quite important. And and it's not about being your boss either. It's really just helping a consultant who helps the client to be accountable for their own actions. Because again, when you're self-employed, it's really easy to let things slip. And so again, it's the nature of the conversation that the consultant has with the client. It's all very well to take advice, but will they do something with it? Or it's all very well as a consultant to recommend a course of action, but will that actually happen? So trying to build a consultant who builds in accountability, I think, is also an important thing.
Yeah, great advice. Anthony, thanks very much for today. Can you please let us know how they can find you, how we can find you?
Yeah, sure. I think the best place in the first instance would be to go to ThoughtConnect.com. Got a link profile there and my contact details. I'm in the process of building another website, so I'm not going to give those details out just at the moment because it's not up and running yet in a form that I'm happy with. I'll tell you what it is. It's called getonlinelab.com, but don't expect to find anything fancy there. That's just sort of a new work in process. So getonlinelab.com is the contact. And so other than that, my contact details through ThoughtConnect Group on the homepage, John.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for your experience and insights today, Anthony. Really appreciate it, and thanks very much for being part of their group. Thank you again for that. And thanks, listeners, for being part of ThoughtConnect.com. We'll chat again soon. See you.
Thanks again, John. Bye.
See you.